I found it interesting hearing the book compared to like Hunger Games, Squid Games, Death Race, Battle Royale. There's definitely like the gamic quality of it is
Yeah, I already appreciate where you're going with it though.
But I think that the intentionality in your work is different, and it must be credited, and it must be seen for what it is, because we can't strip back that what you're writing about has a direct application onto what we're currently experiencing, especially, you know, like with Black people, especially in America. And, you know, you have a moment in the book where one of the footnotes speaks about how trans people in this book experience the system like 50% more or something like this.
Yeah.
And I think that reality of your writing is so important to keep reinstating.
It's tough, like, and I mean, there's a lot of, I think that I've sort of noticed this, like when you write in a certain format or employ a certain like people have
like a logic.
People have very specific references.
Yeah.
My first book was a short story collection. I think just by that fact alone, that obviously had like, I guess, social implications. People think of Black Mirror like first and last, because just like the cultural touch
of that anthology style
of like just even having anthology, which is wild. But like, let alone the fact that like was concerned with the real world in some way. And I think with the like, to me, like even Hunger Games and Squid Games are very different. But like and one of them is just very broadly interested in like unfairness economically, I guess, with Hunger Games. But it's also because it's a Squid Game is a little bit more closely tied to like what it's trying to get to in this. It does, and I think it does a good job of it. But it's funny, like part of why, like, not why I did the footnotes, because I wrote the book. It took me 7 years to do it, but I've been telling the story. I once was talking about Squid Game with someone, and I mentioned capitalism, and he didn't know what I was saying. He was like, "Why are you talking about that?" He had basically watched Squid Game and not thought about capitalism once, if you can believe that. And I think for what I'm trying to do, I think it's in some way, by some people's eye, I don't think to my eye, and I think because of my like willingness to like be like, I don't know, diverse with the way the footnotes arrive, but also the way the story in general works. But someone will say I sacrificed some kind of artistic something by being so direct about what I'm connecting this to, you know. But I cared about, to sort of getting back to your point about it being impossible to read this book outside of the context of the carceral state of not only America, but sort of the global, like world, kind of the globe, but in particular the American carceral state. I wanted to be like exactly impossible, you know, to read this book and be like, oh, it's about some woman who kills people with a hammer. And
this can't just purely be entertainment.
It can't be, exactly. Yeah. And I think some of those other things that you mentioned are okay with it being just entertainment, or not. And that's, I mean, the challenge is
for it being entertainment for some and this for others.
Exactly.
But you're trying to bring us all in.
It's like, and to me, again, talking about like sort of my approach to work, this work is that I like pretty much reject the idea, which I think that like in like Hollywood, for example, really buys into, that it has to be either entertaining or smart, entertaining or useful. I could be entertained by the fact that you opened my heart more. To me, I think people use entertaining as like a less than word. I find entertainment, it just means like you're sensory engaged, you're interested, you know, and you're engaged in a certain kind of way. It doesn't have to be a lecture.
Yeah.
I am entertained by like things that are moving, you know.
So true.
I can cry. It doesn't mean I'm not entertained, you know. Or I could, even the Times, not to like say anything bad about them, like they do like the by the book, like these interviews in the New York Times where they talk to authors, and one of the questions was, do you prefer to be moved intellectually or emotionally? And I said, basically a short version of my answer was, almost always in things I like, it's both. you know.
Yeah, that's so hard to separate.
It's not separate, but we have this like weird implicit kind of idea. And I think it manifests in the way some people make their work. So it's something like, or in the way people read other people's work, maybe even more so. So some people want to watch Hunger Games. That's why, like, the best example of this maybe is, you know, with Star Wars, and they're all mad because whatever they're mad about. Really, they're mad that they don't want to see a woman holding a lightsaber. That's like some of their issues, or they don't want to see a black guy near anything, whatever. But this, all the racism, misogyny, whatever, with the Star Wars fans, it's kind of been playing out over the last couple of years. They're like, they often say something like, why is it so political? Why would Star Wars be so political, blah, blah, blah. And my attitude is always like, it's called Star Wars. Star Wars is the title.
Yeah.
Star Wars, you know? And so for them, somehow, like, war is not political, but a woman holding a lightsaber, that's politics. It's called Star Wars. It even starts off, I don't know if you've ever seen watch Star Wars movies. They start off with, like, the yellow text talking about, like, diplomats and tariffs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's describe the political moment in time every single time. Literally naming senators and stuff. Even that's the name. Diplomat, senators, like, oh, I don't like the politics. This whole thing is politics. It's about politics. It's only about politics. It's called Star Wars. War is political. War is a political conflict. Like, anyways, I say what to say. Even that, somehow people think that that's meant to be only entertainment. And a big part of my, I think, like, almost like what I try to be is like, same thing in my classroom, like, engagement is when I'm teaching, is like sort of the foundation of my class pedagogically, but we learn. I think it's important, and that's like part of my lane. Like, I know that people, if it doesn't matter how smart what you said was, if everyone was asleep, they didn't hear it. And so that's just my style. But I just think that, like, it's so interesting how people want things to be this or that. It's just like really reductionist, really like simple-minded attitude towards whatever. And the Star Wars one just makes me laugh because it's called Star Wars.